What would you do if your parents invited you to a family meeting just to announce that your brother would get the entire inheritance and you, nothing because you're strong enough to make it on your own? No warning, no discussion, just a quiet betrayal dressed up as a compliment. They handed him $15 million while you sat there in a studio apartment you worked 2 jobs to afford. They called it love. They called it fair. But what they didn't know was that the one person they ignored, she had a plan and a legacy they couldn't touch. Stay with me till the end, because what my grandmother left behind wasn't just money. It was a secret no one saw coming. And when it came out, everything changed. I still remember the click of the door behind me, the heavy sound of it closing like the start of something I couldn't yet name. The air inside the conference room was cold, too cold, but my palms were damp with heat. I sat in one of the stiff leather chairs across from my parents and my older brother, Derek. They said it was just a family discussion. What it really was a premeditated ambush. Attorney Benjamin Walsh adjusted his glasses and began reading aloud from a folder marked Hartwell Family Estate Disbursement Drafts. My parents had decided to distribute their wealth while they were still alive, to quote them. My mother, Patricia, nodded with fake warmth as if this was some generous, inclusive moment. It wasn't. "We've decided to give Derek $15 million, my mother said with a smile. Then she turned to me. "And Alina, you're strong enough to make your own way. You don't need this the way he does." Just like that. Like I was some side character in my own family, like years of sacrifice meant nothing. I blinked. My throat was dry. $15 million to Derek. The same Derek who had failed not 1, not 2, but 3 businesses in 5 years. Who had borrowed, begged, and blown through every investment like it was confetti. And me, I'd worked through college, slept on a futon, budgeted groceries, lived in a Portland studio apartment the size of a closet. I had never asked them for $1. "Alina, look at what you've accomplished on your own." My father chimed in, voice calm like a therapist delivering bad news. "You don't need help. Derek does." So that was it. Strength wasn't something to be honored. It was something to be punished. I sat there frozen while they handed over the family fortune like I didn't exist. Derek didn't look at me. Of course he didn't. He just nodded, swallowed hard, and let them do it. And that should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because just as they were preparing to leave for their fancy dinner reservation, Attorney Walsh cleared his throat and pulled out another envelope. "Actually," he said, "there's one more matter to address. From your late mother, Elena Hartwell." And in that moment, everything shifted. You could feel the mood in the room snap like a rubber band. The air conditioning suddenly seemed quieter. Even Derek, who'd been fidgeting with his sleeve for most of the meeting, sat perfectly still. My mother's smile faltered. My father leaned back in his chair like he was preparing for a storm. Attorney Walsh opened the folder with deliberate calm. Elena Hartwell left behind a separate file, one that was to be opened only after the matter of the primary inheritance had been settled. He glanced at my parents. Per her written request, she wanted Alina to receive this privately, but she also requested that it be witnessed by Patricia and Howard. That got their attention. My mother's face had gone pale. My father's jaw tightened. And me, my heart was racing, but for the first time that day, I wasn't scared. Attorney Walsh slid a thick manila envelope toward me. My name was written across the front in my grandmother's familiar handwriting, slanted, precise, underlined once. My fingers trembled as I opened the seal. Inside, a handwritten letter, a stack of legal documents, property deeds, and something I never expected, old photographs, and jewelry I hadn't seen since childhood. The letter began simply, "My dearest Alina, if you're reading this, then your parents have revealed their true priorities. I'm so sorry, but I've been preparing for this moment for a long time." I swallowed hard and kept reading. 25 years ago, I created a trust fund in your name using the profits from my first business. I watched how they always gave Derek the benefit of the doubt and gave you the burden of perfection. It ends now. Tears welled up, but I forced myself to keep going. My grandmother listed everything she had left me. An apartment building in Seattle, a commercial property downtown, a lake house in Bend I didn't even know existed, stock portfolios she'd built silently for decades, all of it under my name, all of it separate from the family estate, estimated value over $12 million, and tucked inside that same envelope was the ultimate blow, a second letter, not to me, to my parents, sealed in red wax, to be opened only if they contested the trust, and clearly meant as a warning. Alina Attorney Walsh said softly, "Your grandmother wanted you to understand this wasn't about money. It was about recognition. She believed you deserved to know the truth about how your family had treated you, and she left a record of everything." My parents sat in stunned silence. Derek stared at the floor. But I felt something rise in me. Not revenge, not anger, something deeper, clarity. And as I picked up the next folder, Attorney Walsh handed me, marked Confidential Investigation. I knew this story wasn't over. The folder was heavier than it looked. Attorney Walsh placed it gently in front of me like it was made of glass. 6 months before her passing, your grandmother hired a private investigator. She had concerns. My parents shifted in their seats. I opened it. Inside were spreadsheets, bank statements, photographs, pages and pages of evidence. Every check my parents had written to Derek, every loan forgiven, every lie swept under the rug, a clean, detailed trail of favoritism that spanned over a decade. Attorney Walsh tapped the first page. Just in the past 5 years alone, Derek received nearly $300,000, direct support, investments, quiet bailouts, and not a dollar of it was repaid. He paused. Meanwhile, you received nothing. The silence was loud. I looked at my father. You kept telling me there was no extra money to help with grad school, that you were tapped out after replacing the roof. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Attorney Walsh flipped to another page, and this, he said, is a summary of conversations Elena recorded without your knowledge. My mother flinched. She noted that the two of you had been planning to exclude Alina from meaningful inheritance for at least 2 years. Repeated conversations took place at family dinners, often while Elena was in the room pretending to nap. The betrayal was written in ink, on paper, in receipts. My grandmother had known, and unlike me, she hadn't just swallowed the pain. She documented it. Derek finally found his voice. "Alina, you don't get it. It wasn't personal. I needed help. The restaurant was profitable, I cut in." Attorney Walsh nodded. "We verified that too. For the past 18 months, Derek's business has been in the black. His claim of financial distress was exaggerated. Strategically." I turned to my brother. "You lied," he fumbled for words. "I didn't lie exactly. I just played up the risks. I needed capital to expand." "You knew they'd believe you," I said quietly, "because they always do." I looked at my mother, then my father. "This isn't just about money. It's about how you see me, how you've always seen me." And for the first time in my life, they had nothing to say. But Attorney Walsh wasn't finished. "There's more," he said. "Elena also kept a personal journal, detailed notes about how your family responded to your accomplishments and Derek's failures." He opened a smaller envelope. A promotion I'd earned at Sunnendale Financial, a raise I'd called to share. My mother's response transcribed word for word. "Oh, that's nice. But Derek is struggling again. Maybe you could help him. They didn't celebrate me. They deflected me. Every single time." And my grandmother had watched, quietly, carefully, until now. I sat back in the chair, the thick stack of documents in front of me. Proof of favoritism, proof of manipulation, proof of who I'd always been in their eyes, a second priority, a footnote, a fallback. But my grandmother, she'd seen me from the start. Attorney Walsh laid out the next item, a trust breakdown. Elena's assets were extensive. In addition to the properties and stock portfolio, she left a full business continuity plan for Alina. This includes deeds, leases, and transition documents for all 3 properties. I blinked. 3. Yes, he said, smiling faintly. There's a third property, a lake house in Bend, remote but well-maintained. She kept it out of family discussions intentionally. Derek looked stunned. My parents. They looked gutted, like they were watching a secret they'd tried to suppress surface, dragging them with it. She also left behind instructions for managing the commercial space. Attorney Walsh added, it's currently leased to a fast-growing tech startup. Their lease renewal will more than double your monthly rental income. My father finally spoke. Elena never told us about any of this. We had no idea she owned so much. She tried. Attorney Walsh replied calmly. According to her notes, she brought up estate planning on multiple occasions, but both of you told her not to worry, that you'd handle everything fairly. I remembered those conversations now, half heard through phone calls on speaker. Don't stress, Mom will divide things equally when the time comes. False promises, empty reassurance. She hadn't believed them, so she'd planned without them. Elena also left a final measure. Walsh continued. She wrote a sealed letter to be opened only if her estate plan is contested. Inside it, she includes legal and personal documentation that, if made public, could significantly damage reputations. The threat was unspoken, but real. Derek sat perfectly still. No more excuses, no more charm. I glanced at him. You knew, didn't you? You knew how they treated us differently. He didn't deny it. I didn't ask for this, he muttered, but I didn't say no to it either. That's the part I'll remember, I said, because silence is a choice. And he made it again and again. As the meeting wrapped up, Attorney Walsh handed me a final envelope. Elena also left you this, he said. Not a legal document, just a message. I opened it slowly. Inside, one line, handwritten in her slanted cursive, being strong should never be punished. And just like that, the room that had once made me feel invisible was suddenly too small to contain me. I stood at the edge of the conference table, my hand steady for the first time in hours. The letter from my grandmother was tucked neatly in my coat pocket next to the keys to 3 properties and a future no one in this room had ever imagined for me. They had written me off because I never begged, because I never broke, because I never needed saving. But now they needed to be saved from the truth they'd buried for decades. My father cleared his throat. Elena, what do you want from us? The question hung in the air like a challenge, but I didn't flinch. I want you to be honest, I said. With me, with yourselves, for once. They looked confused, like I was speaking a language they didn't understand. So I spelled it out. I want you to admit that you've always treated Derek and me differently, that you decided I could survive with less just because I didn't make noise about needing more. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We never meant to hurt you, she whispered. We thought we were doing what was best. No, I said firmly. You were doing what was easiest. They stayed silent, even Derek, especially Derek. You gave him excuse after excuse and called it love. I continued. You gave me pressure, silence, and expectations, and called it pride. That's when Derek finally spoke. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have spoken up. Years ago. Then why didn't you, I asked. He paused, then shrugged helplessly. Because I was scared. I didn't want to lose their help. I wasn't sure I could do it without them. That hit harder than I expected, because I had done it without them, and they punished me for it. I nodded slowly. That's the difference between us. You feared failure. I feared fading away. I looked at my parents again, and you made it clear his struggle earned support. My strength earned silence. Attorney Walsh broke the tension gently. Elena, we can schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss management of the trust and properties. Your grandmother's financial advisor is on standby. I nodded. Let's do that. There are decisions to make. As I gathered the files, my mother reached out. Will you come to Sunday dinner? For years, that would have felt like an olive branch. Now it felt like an afterthought. I don't know yet, I said. I need time. I need space to figure out who I am when I'm no longer begging to be seen. and I walked out, past the table where I'd been dismissed, past the people who called themselves my family, and into a life my grandmother had prepared in secret just for me. 3 weeks later, I stood in the heart of Seattle's Capitol Hill, keys in hand, staring up at the red brick apartment building that now bore my name on every legal deed. 12 units, fully occupied, waiting list longer than a grocery line in a snowstorm. A tech startup leased the commercial space downtown, my second property. The rental income alone had already exceeded my former salary at Sunnundale Financial, and that lake house in Bend tucked against the water like a secret. My first quiet retreat. My grandmother's last word. I'd left my job, not in anger, but because I had finally earned the right to build something of my own on my terms. I used part of the trust to launch a fund for women starting businesses in underrepresented industries. Because if there was one thing I knew deeply, it was this. Being overlooked doesn't mean you're incapable. It means no one's looking close enough. Then one morning a call came in, Alina Derrick's voice on the other end hushed and unsteady. Mom and Dad, they want to see the books, real numbers, not just the summaries I've been giving them. I said nothing for a moment, letting that sink in. The accountant's going through everything. They're asking questions I can't dodge anymore, he admitted. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was finally real. The truth has a way of catching up, Derrick, I said. You spent years letting them carry your burden, while they told me to carry mine alone. There was a pause on his end. I didn't think they'd ever question me, he whispered. They didn't, I replied. Not until grandmother made them. Later that day, I walked into a meeting with the founders of the tech startup leasing my downtown property. They wanted to expand. I wanted to listen, because now my time had value and I wasn't giving it away for free. As we talked numbers and growth strategy, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Please come to dinner Sunday. We miss you. I stared at the message. Once that would have made my stomach twist with guilt. Now it made me pause, because being missed is not the same as being seen. I showed up anyway, not for them, but for me. The house felt smaller. Derrick sat quietly. My father served roast like it was any other Sunday, but the room had shifted. The power dynamic, the emotional gravity was different. How are the properties my father asked over dinner? Profitable, I said. Grandmother was strategic. My mother wrung her hands. We had no idea she had accumulated so much. She always acted so modest. Frugality isn't weakness, I replied. It's the foundation of real wealth. Then Derrick cleared his throat. I've decided to pay back the inheritance money, he said. It wasn't mine, and I don't need it anymore. My parents stared. Derrick, you don't have to. Yes, he said. I do. I nodded. It's not about the money, it's about truth. And for the first time, maybe ever, they listened. In the months that followed, Derrick's restaurant collapsed under the weight of reality. No more padded numbers, no more quick bailouts. He moved back in with our parents, started working in someone else's kitchen, finally learning what it meant to build from the bottom without a safety net. As for me, I expanded my holdings, built relationships with people who valued integrity over charm, and mentored women like me, girls who'd been told they were too strong to need help. I used to think the betrayal was the worst part, but now I know. The erasure is what lingers. Being invisible. Being expected to carry the weight silently because they believed silence was strength. But my grandmother knew better. Her final act wasn't revenge. It was justice written in ink and sealed in trust. And the greatest victory, it wasn't the money or the properties. It was knowing that I never needed them to see me to become someone worth seeing. Have you ever been punished for being strong? Share your story in the comments, because strength should never come at the cost of love. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories of betrayal and comeback.